So you want to play Star Wars Destiny online, but you don't know how. This video is for you. If you've never played Destiny online, and you don't normally play computer games, the first thing that you're going to need to do is go to steampowered.com and create a free account and download their client. If you're not familiar with Steam, it's basically a digital distribution launcher, kind of like iTunes is for music, but Steam distributes video games. It's free to create an account, and you can purchase video games and other types of software, and occasionally there's lots of free giveaways, so if you just want to get started with gaming, you can do that pretty easily. But your first step is to come to the Steam store and create an account and install their client. Once you install the client on your desktop, you'll have to purchase Tabletop Simulator. Regular price is usually $19.99, but it goes on sale pretty frequently for $9.99 or potentially even less, but I can't remember what the lowest I've seen it for is. Once you've purchased and installed the game, you can go to your library and then click on Tabletop Simulator to play it. But before you do that, you need to find the mod for Star Wars Destiny. And in order to do so, you go to the workshop, which is a place where people upload mods and additional capabilities for various games. And the one that you want for Star Wars Destiny is called Super Destiny. So you just type that in and hit search. It'll be the first result that you see, Super Destiny by Agent Elrond. When you subscribe to the mod, it's going to download any required files, and it'll be installed and ready for you the next time you start the game. If you don't already use Star Wars Destiny database, I strongly recommend it because it's the easiest way to get decks into Tabletop Simulator for playing. The first thing you have to do is pick a deck and click on the detail view. And then up on the right corner here, there's this download link. You can either do text file or Tabletop Simulator. Click TTS. And then save that file. Most browsers are going to download the file into your downloads folder, so you will need to move it to the right location in order for TTS to pick it up. The folder that you need to save your deck to is in your Documents parent directory. So you need to save it in Documents, My Games, Tabletop Simulator, Saves, Saved Objects. When you're ready to play the game, click play. If you know of a game that you're trying to join that somebody else has hosted, you're going to click on this join button and then do a search for the server. You can type in the name of the server and find it pretty easily here. If you want to create your own game, you can click this create button and then multiplayer. You can enter your server name, which we'll do Game Theory, and then we'll just enter in a random password, so we'll say Yoda, and then select the number of players, and then create your server. The specific game that you're going to pick is Super Destiny down here under the Workshop tab. And 99% of the time, you're going to pick a 2-player standard, and this will load a blank table for Destiny on TTS. If you don't have much experience playing video games on a computer or just maneuvering 3D environments, this one is pretty simple to get the hang of. 99% of moving and looking around is going to be done with your mouse. You've got a cursor that corresponds to your color at the table. This is a little blue finger pointer here. And you can manipulate and move things and change the angle just by using the mouse. If you hold down the right mouse button and move around, that'll change your perspective. If you left click, that's what allows you to select and move and drag things. If you hold down your mouse button, or the middle mouse button, you can pan a little bit without changing the angle. And if you scroll with your mouse wheel, that will let you zoom in or out. And that's the basics of moving around here. Now, as you look at the setup, you've got these rectangles and things here on the table. This rectangle in front of you is your play area, your board area, where your characters and your supports go. Here's an outline for your deck and your discard pile, as well as your resource pool and the battlefield. Down here on the corner, there are different tokens that you can put onto the table if you need them, but most of the time you will not have to do that. If you want to get a token out on the field, you just click and drag from one of those bags, and then there we have a power action token. To load that deck that we saved earlier, you're going to click on Objects. So this is the one that we saved earlier. You can just click on it once, and that'll spawn a deck right in the middle of the table. Now, if you just click and drag to try and pull something out of here, it's going to pull your deck first, then your first character, and then the dice will pop up automatically, then your second character, and then your third character, and then a battlefield. So if you have a plot, that's going to come out at this time too, but now you have a 0 right here and next to the name of the deck, and there's nothing left in that bag. To get rid of the bag or to move anything, you're going to left click and hold down until the object turns blue and kind of raises up, and you can just move that off to the side. You don't need that anymore. Use the mouse and left click and drag to move anything around where it needs to go. You can reposition your characters, and then you can reposition the dice. To select multiple objects, you click and drag, and then that'll let you move everything that you selected. So we'll just put those die back on the cards for now. Now the next step in your setup is to get 5 cards in your hand, which will come from your deck. You could right click and use this menu to draw cards one at a time, but you don't want to do that first. The first thing that you want to do is shuffle. One thing to pay attention to is when you hover over an option here, there's going to be a key highlighted. That's your shortcut key. So you can click and shuffle, or if you just hover over the object and press R, you can shuffle that way also. Now if you need to draw a card, you can right click and select draw, or if you hover over the deck and press the number 4, that will draw up the top 4 cards of your deck. Since we're in the setup phase, it's pretty common that you're going to want to put some of your opening draw back on into your deck and draw new cards. So the way that you do that is click and drag to put those cards back on your deck. But if you'll notice, it comes out of your hand face up because that's how it's laying on this table here. So the first thing you want to do is flip those cards over, and you can either flip with this right click menu, or you just hover over and then press the F key. If you want to select all 3 cards, you can click and drag to do that, or you can hold down the control key, click, click, and click to have more than one selected. But I just want to put these 3 back, so I'm going to drag them over to the deck, and you can see that the deck is highlighted, and then release. Now if you draw up those 3 cards again immediately, those are the same ones that we just put back. So we're going to select them again, flip them over, put them back in the deck, and then shuffle a couple of times, and then press 3 to draw those back up. Now one thing that you're probably noticing is that the card text and pictures are pretty small and you can't see them. So thankfully there's a magnification tool built in. If you just hold the alternate key over any card or object, you'll see a much larger view of whatever it is you're trying to look at. So this works on cards, battlefields, as well as die sides. And you're going to use this quite a bit. So just hold down the alternate key whenever you're hovering your mouse over an object. The final phase of setup is to get 2 resources, and you can click this icon on the lower right side, and then it'll add 2 resources to your pool over here. When you're ready to roll in, you select your die, move them to the die pool, click and drag to select them all, and then you're going to, you can right click and roll, or you can select all of them and then just press the R key about 3 or 4 times, and then that should be sufficiently randomized. Now, if you want to see what you just rolled, you can zoom right in and pan over, or you can hover over and hold the alternate key to know that we've got a 2, a 1, and a 1. So if you lose the roll off and your opponent selects their battlefield, you just flip yours over. Or if you win the battlefield or your opponent wants to use it, yours will stay face up. Then your dice go back onto their respective characters. If you need to add or remove shields, you can do so with these counters here attached to each card. If you're starting TTS for the first time, you're probably going to notice that when you click to rotate, and you can do this with either the menu or do Q or E to rotate left and right, but you're probably going to notice that it's only rotating a little bit. That's because by default it only rotates objects by 15 degrees. So click on that a couple of times and change it to 90, and then that'll be much easier. So the way you'd roll out is you just move your die up here, exhaust your character, and then roll them in. And you can just repeat that as necessary. And then you're ready to go. At the end of a round, when die need to come back and cards get reset, you're just going to press Q and E to rotate them back to the right position, and then move the die back on top of the cards. If you find for some reason that you need a duplicate of a card or a die that you have in play, you can hover over it, right click, and select copy, and then right click and paste. Or you can just use your keyboard shortcuts, do Control C and then Control V. If your character gets defeated, you can just move the die off to the side and then flip your card over. At some point you're going to need to focus a die or turn it to a blank, and there are 2 ways that you can do that. You can hover over a die and right click to bring up the context menu, and then the second option is this rotational value, and those values 1 through 6 correspond with the die sides on a card. So if I turn it to 1, it's going to be a 2 ranged, or if I turn it to a 6, it's a blank. You can also use the number keys 1 through 6 to turn it to a matching side. There are a couple of things that you should know about your hand in a game of Destiny. If you click and highlight and drag here, you can see this blue shape down here. This signifies the cards or objects that are in your hand. Even though that they're face up, your opponent cannot see them, and if there's an opponent on this side of the table, all you would see are 5 cards face down. So your opponent can't see whatever's in this little area right here. If they play a card that allows them to look at your hand, you can select all 5 cards and then put it in the middle of the table, and then they'll be able to see and just go look and see what's in your hand here. To pick your hand back up, you just click and drag and put it back in this blue area. If you need to discard cards, just click and drag cards from your hand and then put them off to the side. If your opponent has a card that lets them discard or pick a card at random from your hand, what you'll do is select everything in your hand, press F to flip it over, and then drop it in the middle of the table. So in order to point, if they're not using voice chat, they can just hit the tab key, and then that'll make an arrow show wherever your cursor is. So if somebody's playing probe against this hand and they need to flip 2 cards to look for 2 events, and they say, I want to look at that one and that one, then you know you can just press F right here and land it on the sail and swing in, which are both events, and then they go into the discard pile and you just drag them over here. And you can select what's left of your hand and put it back and then flip it over. If you have a card in your hand that lets you search your deck and find something, you can right click on here and then search, and then you'll just select your card and then drag it over into your hand. After you do this, you're going to want to shuffle again. That's basically all there is to TTS. It's pretty simple to pick up, and most people are going to be super patient with you if you're just figuring it out for the first time. So I hope to see you in Virtual Landia and play against you online soon.